Welcome to this Happy Campers interview today. I am thrilled to have my longtime friend, an amazing human being, Maria Horner, on today. Maria is the owner and director of Catalina Island Camps, and what a fun program. We're so excited to talk about just the amazing outcomes that they have at Catalina and how the kids just come back there for years and years and just love it so much. Welcome, Maria. Thanks for being on the series.
It's fun to be here.
So first of all, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background and all the work that you've done with kids over the years and just your story and how you ended up at Catalina.
Great. Thanks, Audrey. I'm so excited about this question. I love that you ask it. We, during our staff training every year, each night we gather in our campfire ring to kind of sing a few songs, debrief the day, have a little reflection time. And each night, one of our directors, there are 8 of us, each night, a different director tells what we call their camp origin story. So how they ended up at camp and why they've stuck around all these years. So I get to tell this story every year, and it's just a lot of fun. So this is what I tell my staff. I ended up here at camp because I have an intense dislike for making my bed every day. So I grew up.
That's a good one.
I grew up in a house where you made your bed every morning, before you had breakfast, before you went out to play, before you watched cartoons, you made your bed. And I didn't really think much about that because it was just the norm in our family until I went away to college. And I didn't have to make my bed ever if I didn't want to. And I found that incredibly liberating. When I went home after that first year, when I went home for the summer, not surprisingly, my mother expected that I make my bed every day again. And as only a 19-year-old who's been away at college can, I found that oppressive. It wasn't unrealistic. I just didn't want to have to do it. So about 2 weeks into my first summer, after my freshman year in college, I vowed that I was going to find a job where I didn't have to live at home. So I went back to school in the fall and had a couple of friends who had worked at this Girl Scout camp that summer. And they told these amazing stories about the friends they made and the things they did and how awesome it was. And I thought, that's for me. I can live at camp. I don't have to make my bed. It's perfect. Forget that I didn't have any experience with kids. And quite honestly, didn't really even like kids all that much. I mean, I was that high school girl who never babysat unless she was forced to. Like, I had cousins in town and my mother would make me. So, but it was like, I was motivated, right? I was motivated by this desire to not live at home during the summer. So my friends helped me fill out the application. They totally coached me on the interview. They told me what questions she was going to ask. They told me what answers I should give. So I went into this interview feeling super prepared. And it went great for the majority of it. She asked me questions I knew she was going to ask. I gave great answers. I could tell by her body language and her facial expressions that I was killing it. And then she asked me a question that I hadn't prepped for. And it was something like, imagine you're on a field leading games with a group of kids. What would you be looking for? So I panicked just a little bit because I hadn't been prepped for this question. And then I said, to myself, okay, Maria, stop. Like, you're a PE major. So my degrees in physical education, I wanted to be an athletic trainer or a physical therapist. And that semester, I was actually taking a class called Changing the Games Children Play, which basically we played like Duck, Duck, Goose and Red Rover and things like that and talked about how to make those kinds of games better for kids. So I had a moment of panic, and then I launched into what I thought was this beautiful story about making sure that the games you were playing were accessible for all of the kids, that there was a level playing field, that there was nobody who was it, people weren't out and watching, and the importance of keeping kids engaged. And I'm feeling really good about this answer I'm given, but I am not getting the same vibe from her that I had been before. So when I finally stopped talking, she looked at me and she said, "You wouldn't consider safety at all?" Right. And at that moment, it's like, okay, I'm moving home and working fast food this summer. But I did get the job.
Few.
I still say, I think they might have been a little desperate that summer, or maybe she saw something in me that I didn't even know was there at the time. So I got a little nervous as the summer approached, because I wasn't, again, this wasn't really my thing. I was truly doing it so I didn't have to make my bed every morning, which isn't the greatest motivation. So I got to camp, and honestly, staff training didn't help any. Staff training at every camp, but especially at a Girl Scout camp, is incredibly high energy. There's a lot of singing and dancing and yelling and screaming and hugging and cheering, and it's super loud and super overwhelming. And I had to make my bed every day. Now, it was just straightening up my sleeping bag, which is a little bit better, but I was like, oh my God.
I was wondering, I was thinking that the whole time, like, what about cabin inspection?
Oh yeah, right. I was totally led astray by that. But anyway, but I kept, like, during all of staff training, I just kept reminding myself, okay, I have this job. I don't have to live at home. I'm independent. I mean, I'm an adult now, right? So this is good. I can do this. I can do this. But I was still really not sold on the whole thing. And then the first group of kids came, and I was in Whispering Winds. That was the name of the unit. We had third and fourth grade girls, about, I would guess like between 28 and 30 of them, with like 6 staff. They were with us for 6 days. And I fell in love. I fell in love with the kids. I fell in love with the work. I fell in love with the impact that we were having on them. And just as importantly, the impact that they were having on me. And I was hooked. And the day that they left, and remember, 6 days, they were there for 6 days. The day that they left, I cried like a baby. I was like, oh my gosh, if I get this emotionally attached this easy, this job is going to kill me. I've learned how to manage that, because I do get that attached that easily. And one of the really sweet things about that story, like I said, this is a story I tell my staff every year, is that one of the girls who was in that unit my very first summer at camp has actually been the director at that camp for the past few years. Wow. So I get to see her all the time. She's involved with our professional association, so I get to work alongside of her. And it's just really special to know that camp really does have that impact on the kids and on the staff. So I worked there. I worked for the Girl Scouts for 9 years, eventually becoming their camp director and working for them full time. I met my husband at a conference for our professional association, which is kind of funny. And we got married and went to Catalina after that. And we just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary, as well as our 25th summer on the island. So that's kind of how I ended up there.
So how many years were you at the Girl Scout camp? Was Camp Sherman, right?
Camp Sherman. I was there for 9 summers.
Okay.
I was there for 9 summers. Yeah.
So I think, what was your first summer working at camp?
1985.
Oh my gosh. You beat me by a year.
Well, I'm a little older than you, Audrey.
Well, barely. Yeah, because my first summer as a counselor was 86. That's so funny. The mid 80s camp counselor girl.
And you know what I was thinking the other day? I was trying to remember when you and I actually met, and Tom helped me remember. We went, and Tom was there too. It was before we were obviously dating or anything, to a CIT workshop led by Edie Klein.
Absolutely. I remember it well. That was
crazy.
So great. Oh my gosh. Crazy. And that was in like what, 88 or 9 or something?
Yeah, I was already a director. So yeah, it was probably 88 or 89.
Isn't that crazy?
I know.
Anyway, well, okay. So you come, and then it's interesting. So you now run Catalina, but you also volunteer on the side and still work with kids. So for someone who didn't think you wanted to work with kids, you sure do a lot of working with kids.
It's really crazy. It is. I often tell people, if someone had told even 18 or 19-year-old me that this is what I would end up doing and that I would love it so deeply, I would have laughed hysterically. I'd been like, I don't even like to babysit. What am I going to do with kids? But I was fortunate, I landed in a place that provided excellent training, both internally in camp. And I worked, my first boss had a really strong commitment to ongoing professional development and involvement with our professional association, the American Camp Association. So part of my job when I graduated from college and started working for the Girl Scouts full time was to take on increasing leadership roles within our professional association. That was actually part of what I was evaluated on every year. It was an expectation. So I had all of these great opportunities to go to conferences and workshops and really learn from all of the other people out there who do camp professionally and who do other forms of youth development. And that kind of ongoing commitment and learning has been really fun for me. And like you, I mean, just like you, I love to read books and articles and talk to people about things and continue to do training with my staff and for myself.
You know what I want to, because we have not covered it yet in this series with any of the other interviewees. All of the camps who are in this series are accredited by the American Camp Association. And I really haven't even touched on that. And I know that you are one of the trainers who trains people in preparation for accreditation. So I'd love for you to explain to everybody what it means to be an accredited camp program.
Awesome. That's a great question. I'm so glad that I get to be the one who answers it. Now, I am the standards chair for our local office of Southern California and Hawaii. I also am an accreditation visitor. I am an instructor and a trainer in the program as well. And it's something I really believe in. And when I talk to parents about the importance of accreditation, one of the things I say to them is that, you probably wouldn't choose a school that wasn't accredited. You probably wouldn't use a hospital that wasn't accredited. It's kind of the same thing for camps. Our accreditation program is totally voluntary. So when a camp says that they're accredited by the American Camp Association, they've made a decision themselves to do the work to make sure that they're in compliance with a couple of hundred of standards relating from everything to from program quality to staff quality and safety, health and safety, all of those kinds of things. So basically, the way the accreditation process works is a camp decides they want to be accredited. They have to take a training in order to start the process. And then every 5 years, their camp is visited by a team of camp professionals to make sure that their programs and their policies and their practices are in alignment with the standards. And some of that is done through observation, but a lot of it is done through written documentation to make sure that camps are doing the very best they can to provide safe and meaningful experiences for kids. And it's an arduous process. I mean, it takes a lot of time. It's embedded in our culture here at Catalina Island Camps. It's something that we are constantly reviewing and dealing with. And the ACA does require an annual report that you complete in order to maintain accreditation and to ensure that you continue to be in compliance with the standards. But it's a pretty big deal. And I'm always impressed when camps who haven't been accredited before or brand new camps show up in one of my classes and are super excited and committed to the process to making sure that their camp is as safe and effective as it can be.
Yeah, it's super important. I want to be sure that we start talking about Catalina, but I thank you for sharing about that, because honestly, I think people don't really know how important it is. And so it's really important for parents to know that if you're looking for a camp, really check if they're accredited, because regardless of what type of activities they offer or anything else, you really want that assurance, I think, of safety. So Maria, let's talk about Catalina Island Camps. What an amazing program. How long have you been around? Where are you? Like, how long do kids come for? How old are the kids? All that good stuff. So just tell us all about Catalina.
So Catalina Island Camp started as a boys' camp in 1922 at Howland's Landing on the west end of Catalina Island, which is where we're still located. And I'll just say this because not everybody's familiar with the island. The way the island is situated, we don't talk about the north end and the south end, which is kind of what people think. We talk about the west end and the east end. And the east end of the island is where Avalon is, which is where most people, when they go to Catalina, go. We're on the west end, past two harbors, where there's an isthmus in the middle of the island. So we're in a pretty remote location, which is super cool because we just don't have a lot of other stuff going on around us. So it's pretty private and secluded. We are right on the beach. So our girls' camp cabins, the kids who are on the top bunks can roll up the canvas and just look out onto the ocean. It's phenomenal. I'm biased, I get that, but being on an island is an amazing and incredible thing, and we can talk more about that later. But so we've been around since 1922. My understanding is that there was a Catalina Island girls camp, and that They joined the boys camp, I think, in the early 70s. And that's when we became Catalina Island Camps with an S on the end, which is confusing to people, but that's our history, that's our tradition, so it stays. Like I said, Tom and I have been there for 25. This will be our 26th summer. We serve boys and girls. We use the grade that children are currently in more than the age. So we have our primary building block is the 2-week session, but we also have 2 1-week sessions, and we will take kids as young as current first graders in our 1-week sessions all the way up to current 9th graders. And then in our 2-week sessions, we start at current 2nd graders and go all the way up to current 9th graders.
When you say current, that means like right now.
Right
so like
now.
If you're in first grade
Right.
this year, you can come to the 1-week program.
Correct.
And starting in 2nd grade, you can come to your 2-week program or the 1 week.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And we will have kids who combine sessions. So, I mean, we have kids who come for 3, 4, 6 weeks. Just they tend to be a little bit older, although I just enrolled a 3rd grader yesterday who's coming for 4 weeks. So that generally tells me that they have one or both parents who have a personal history of going to camp for longer. And so they can't even imagine camp for a week or 2. That doesn't seem long enough.
Right. Okay. So do you have 4 different 2-week sessions? How many sessions do you have over the summer?
So we have 5 sessions. We have a 1 week and then 3 2 weeks and then a 1 week.
Okay.
A lot of our kids, the majority of our kids come for 2 weeks. That's the primary session length for sure. And our program's built around that.
Okay. And how many kids are at camp at a time?
So we have about between 160 and 170 kids in camp at a time, which honestly I love. So my Girl Scout camp had 350 kids, and most of them were there for 5, 6, or 8 days. And I was in charge of all of them. So honestly, I didn't really get to know you as a camper unless something was really not going well. Whereas on the island with 160 kids who are there for 2 weeks, more than half have been there before. 3 or 4 days in, in my job, I know every kid. And I still stay very involved. I personally enroll every kid in camp. And I do that because just that action of enrolling a kid and putting them in the cabin book and double checking their enrollment form sort of cements their name in my brain. And I love to play this game with kids. The first couple of days, our directors, we serve all of the meals. We're the ones who serve the food. And I play this, you tell me your last name and I'll tell you your first name game with all of the new kids. I'm afraid as I get older, that's getting harder, but that's like my active memory game.
Oh, and they probably are like, wow, how do you know that?
Yeah, they're super impressed. It's like, I've written your name 15 times in the last 10 days. That's how I know. But
that is so great, Maria. That's really, really cool that you know everybody that well. Okay, so I think one of the most amazing things about Catalina is how kids get there. So why don't you talk just about the whole process of how kids get out to this island for their adventure at camp?
Yeah, that's right. And that's exactly what we call it. It's an adventure. And we tell our families and our kids that the adventure really starts at the boat terminal. So we use the Catalina Express out of San Pedro, and we charter a boat from there that will take us from San Pedro directly to our dock at Howland's Landing. And the camp experience really starts at the boat terminal. I'm a mom. And my son's 22 now, but I still, get nervous and worry about him. And honestly, it wasn't until he was born that I truly understood, and Tom and I talked about this a lot, the trust that parents put in you when they give you their kid for a week or 2 weeks. And for us, they're not just giving us their child, they're putting them on a boat, which is a little bit scary. And if I as a mom, like at my camp, a mom can't just get in their car and drive to their kid, right? Because there's no bridge and the boats don't run 24 hours a day. So there's really a need for a high level of trust and an acknowledgement of the anxiety that can sort of build in the days leading up to camp or just driving to the boat terminal. So we joke all the time that we're a very intentional camp. And our first day, that whole boat terminal thing is super intentional. So we bring all 20 of our cabin counselors over to the mainland. Tom and I both come, our girls camp director and her assistant, our boys camp director and his assistant. We all come, everybody's on the mainland. Our CITs are there as well. And so when a family pulls in, they're greeted at the curb by our counselors in training. So these are older high school kids. They're greeted by them. The CITs take their luggage and whisk it away. And one of the CITs will walk the family into the check-in table where I'm sitting. And we've been around and around about this, but I'm sitting for a really specific reason. Because when a child walks up to the table, I'm not even really at eye level with them. I'm actually sort of below them. And this is funny because I know you've talked about Tina Payne Bryson in other interviews. And I didn't realize what a great thing this was until I read this. But when most kids come to check in, I look up at them like I'm below eye level. And I didn't realize what a great thing that was until I read it. So kids come in and check in with me. And that's, again, super intentional. I want to form a connection with the kid right then, not necessarily with the parent, or the parent thing is secondary to making the child feel comfortable. So we get them checked in, and then one of those 4 directors or assistant directors walks each child over to their counselor and introduces them to the counselor and any kids that are already there. And then that child sits down with their counselor and those kids, and they have a whole series of name games and card games and things that they do. Because, some kids will be there for an hour and a half before the boat leaves. Some will be there 5 minutes before the boat leaves. It doesn't matter. But we want to fill that time helping kids start to make connections with their counselor and with each other right from the very first second. And then Tom is there pretty specifically to sort of wander around and talk to parents. We want kids to be interacting with each other and with their counselors. And so Tom's got to engage with the parents to help because they're just as nervous a lot of the time, sometimes even more so than the kids are. And so we call him Family Camp Tom because he's walking around schmoozing people and talking to them. And then once we get everyone checked in, I join him and we do that. And then a little bit before 4:00, we line up and we load everyone onto the boat and wave goodbye to the parents, and we're off. And the thing that is funny to me, Audrey, is that I'm the last one to get on the boat, and when we have a lot of first year campers, we have a lot of parents still waiting to wave goodbye to the boat. When we have a session where it's really heavy on veteran families, there are very few parents still there when the boat leaves. They check their kids in, meet the counselor, say hey to me, and then they're off to LAX to catch a flight or, whatever it is they're doing, which is super flattering, right? Because that says that as a parent, they feel really comfortable with what's going on. The other thing that happens at our boat terminal, I can't believe I didn't say this, is we have 2 nurses and a doctor in camp every week. And our 2 nurses are there at the boat terminal as well. So any kids who are taking medication or have any special medical needs, they get to talk directly with the nurses that will be caring for their child and, have any questions answered. Or again, it's just a feeling of, okay, I've seen with my own eyes the person who's going to be helping take care of my child, and I just feel a lot better. So we get to camp. The kids get off the boat, they meet the second counselor that's going to be in their cabin, the specialist. We take a cabin photo, they take a tour, we unload the luggage, and then, kids move into their cabins. And at that point in time, I go up to the office and I send an email to all of the parents saying, we're here, we got here safely, here's what we're doing, we're uploading the cabin photos. That's all we do that first day, but we do make sure we upload a photo of every cabin group before 7 or 8 o'clock that night, so that every parent knows that their kid arrived okay and can see a picture of them in this new location. And I think it helps ease some of the parental anxiety. At that point, the kids are so excited. The boat ride is so exciting. Lots of times we see dolphins, and just the idea of being on a boat and the waves and the sun and all that, it just creates this real sense of adventure that I think gets everything off on a really good start.
Yeah, for sure. Maria, where do the campers come from? I know you mentioned LAX. So do you have kids from other countries? Where are they all from?
Absolutely. So the vast majority of our kids are from Southern California. I would say easily 65 to 70%. But we also have a large number of kids from like Arizona and Nevada, places where it gets super hot in the summertime, and
Yeah.
where kids don't have access to the ocean. And so
Right.
it's a really big thing. But we do have kids from all over the country and all over the world. We have kids that fly in. Like I said, I was just doing some enrolling the other day. We have a family from Hungary, a family from Mexico City, a family from Canada, a family from Paris. And with the internet, people find us really easily, right? They're looking for a camp in California. And again, we kind of have an ocean and an island, which is super
Very
attractive.
cool.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so you do some really awesome activities that a lot of camps don't have. So why don't you talk about kind of how you take advantage of being right there on the ocean and some of the special things that kids get to do?
Yeah. So, we're right there on the ocean. So about half, maybe 60% of our activities are focused on the water. So we do sailing. We have a couple of Hobie cats and some other sailboats that the kids get to sail in with our sailing instructors. We do a lot of kayaking and stand-up paddle boarding. We have power boats, so we do wakeboarding and water skiing and tubing and banana boating. And then we do a lot of skin diving, like a lot of snorkeling, putting kids in wetsuits and putting them in the water and giving them the opportunity to see what's down there is really something pretty unique. A lot of kids swim in pools, but not a lot of kids get to spend that kind of time in the ocean. We have all of the gear and all of the equipment and a lot of really great instruction. And it's really fun to see kids get excited after the first time they've been in the water. We also, with our kids who are a little bit older, do night dives. So kids can snorkel at night, which is an entirely different experience, and it's really cool to watch kids come out of the water after their first night dive, especially kids who are maybe a little bit nervous going in, and they realize how incredibly cool it is to see the ocean at night. And we have dive lights and everything, but just that sort of energy and enthusiasm. And then on the land, we do a lot of really traditional camp activities. We have archery and riflery. We started 2 summers ago, tomahawks. I don't know if you guys do tomahawks, but they are so popular now, so popular. We visited a mutual friend's camp and they have it there. And Tom threw his first tomahawk and got a bullseye and he was sold. He's like, we're totally doing tomahawks. We have a high ropes course and a climbing wall and a zip line. We do arts and crafts and traditional like games, hikes, things like that. And we also, one of the things that we have that's a little bit unique, I think, is we have our garden. So we run an outdoor education program in the spring and the fall that has a strong focus on sustainability, and our organic garden and compost area is a big part of that. So we compost all of our food waste. We use the island as a metaphor for like, where does stuff go? There's no place for it to go on the island. So we talk a lot about take what you can eat and eat what you can take, and kids all help with composting. They help plant things in the garden, they help harvest things from the garden, they help build things in the garden. And it's really interesting. We've had the garden now for over 20 years, and when we first started it was really for our outdoor ed program, and I was not at all sold on the fact that kids who were coming to camp to have fun would think that digging in the dirt and composting their food would be fun. And I am thrilled to say that I was 100% wrong. Kids love it. And I would say one of the things that I get the most requests for, well, there are 2 things from parents after the summer. One are recipes for things that our kitchen staff cook, because we have really amazing food at camp. We're super blessed with the people we have in our kitchen. And the other is people want resources on how to start composting at home, because their kids learned how to do it at camp, and they want to start something at home. And a mom this fall who I traded emails with because she wanted, her daughter was super into it. Her daughter's like, I think in 7th grade this year and has been coming to camp for a couple of years. And for Christmas this year, her mom and dad bought her a backyard composting system. And so she sent me these great pictures of Christmas morning of this young preteen, or she's probably 13, getting excited about a compost bin, which I think is pretty incredible.
That's so cool.
Isn't
That
that
is
awesome?
amazing. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really awesome. And I know you as a camp as well are really good about like not producing trash and
Right.
just like it's just
Mhm.
globally you do such a great job and kind of role
Yeah.
models for other camp programs. So it's really what a great example and huge impact you're having on those kids.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, just like with anything, when you have a couple of staff members who are super passionate, which, we're fortunate to have, they drive it all and show you how easy it really is to do. And I'm not going to lie, I was a hard person to convince when our elder ed director said, Maria, I think we can compost all of our food waste. I said, oh, that's ridiculous. We can't compost all of our food waste. It's way too much. Once again, I was wrong, which I'm always happy to be proven wrong by my staff, because in many ways they're so much smarter than I am. And so we compost all of our food waste, and that compost eventually turns into the soil that we use, not just in our garden, but in planting areas all around camp.
Yeah,
so it's kind of a cool thing.
Okay, well, let's talk. You mentioned, and I just want to make sure that people understand, you are truly, really an expert in kids. I mean, you do so much reading. You were very involved in your school. You've been a youth group leader. I mean, you and I talk about many books that we've read. We keep up with Tina Payne Bryson and everything else that comes out about kids and how we can raise great, thriving future adults. So what are some of the things that you really focus on at Catalina that you're, working on character traits or life skills that are really important to you at Catalina?
Well, I think one of the things that just sort of naturally happens for us is this idea around independence, right? Michael Thompson's one of my all-time favorites, and in his book, Homesick and Happy, he talks about how the one thing that we can't teach our kids as parents is independence. Like they have to learn independent from us. And I think when you get on a boat, there's an increased feeling of, wow, like I'm really not with my parents. And for the parents, I'm really not with my kids. So that's a big thing. I also think we have a really unique sort of blend in our program between group-centered activities and a group-centered focus and the opportunity for individual choice. So during a 2-week session, our kids are placed into cabin groups. Maybe I should back up a second. Our kids are placed into cabin groups of 8 to 10 kids who are in the same grade, and they have 2 to 3 counselors in that cabin with them, and one of them is the cabin counselor. So during that first week, cabins are scheduled into activities as a cabin group, and they travel around at the activities with their cabin counselor, and that cabin counselor is with them to provide that continuity and support throughout all of the different activities. And again, we're a super intentional place, and that schedule is really intentional because so many of the activities that we do are things that kids don't do at home every day. Right. So we want them to try everything. We don't want them to just stick with the stuff that they already know. Then during the second week, we have what we call our badge work program. So kids have the opportunity to make individual choices then. Like maybe during that first week, maybe they've never sailed before. So they went sailing during the first week. They love sailing. And so during badge work, they get to do a whole lot of sailing. One of the really cool things about our badge work program is there's a progression in it. So kids, as they come back year after year, can do more and more things. And one of, I think, the coolest things is to get their gold star in any activity, which is the highest rank. Part of every gold star is teaching younger kids. So they get an opportunity to share the knowledge that they've gained over their time at camp with others. But embedded in that whole 2-week program are some other additional opportunities for individual choice. We on Thursday mornings, we have what we call Thursday morning adventures. So kids make an individual choice about which adventure they want to do. Maybe they want to hike over to Lion's Head and go snorkeling there, or they want to really challenge themselves with a strenuous Howlands Peak hike, or they want to just kayak over to Emerald Bay and snorkel there, or they want to paddleboard, do a stand-up paddleboard to Little Geiger. And we really talk with our kids and with our counselors, even more so during training, about encouraging kids to make their own decisions. That's not a time where they all have to sign up for the same thing. So if you're super excited about doing the Howlands Peak hike, but your friends just aren't into the challenge that presents, it's okay. You'll go and you'll make some new friends. And that's a really great thing. We also, in the middle of our 2-week sessions, we have overnights. So all but our youngest kids, again, get to make an individual choice on 4 different overnights that range from a really relatively easy 3-mile walk to a nearby beach to spend the night, all the way up to a trip that requires an 18-mile hike back into camp.
Wow.
So letting kids make those individual choices. And then probably one of the things that our kids love the most is every night after dinner, we have between 45 minutes and an hour, just depending upon how long dinner takes, of what we call it zones, because basically we have counselors spread out in different zones in camp. And for that period of time, kids can pretty much go and do whatever within those supervised zones. So, and it's total self-directed free play. There's usually a soccer game going on and a beach volleyball game. And then, there's a staff member on the dive deck playing Magic the Gathering. I don't know what that is, but it's cards and kids like it. We have in our rec area, we have our library and some comfy chairs so kids can just sit and read. There's also a ton of board games and Legos there. They can go over to arts and crafts and make a bracelet, and they can go someplace for 5 minutes and then go someplace else. They can mix and mingle in different ways. And sometimes kids are just sitting around talking, or they're throwing a Frisbee and hanging out with different counselors and different kids. And so that's a really special part of our program as well. And I think really helps kids learn to make some of those choices and sort of go with the flow and be okay with not always being with their 5 best friends or their 8 new best friends in their cabin, and making decisions for themselves, which I think is a great thing also.
During that second week, can they kind of like specialize in something, or do they kind of pick different things every day, or so it's like kind of like a major, like if they really want to do sailing, they can just do that a lot?
It's a little bit, Tom should be here because this is his jam, the badge work program. It's a little bit complex. They sign up they rank the different activities. We track from year to year what they've done before, so they can earn, we call it their stars, 4 different levels of stars in each activity. So if you got your white star in riflery last year, this year you can go for your red star, which requires a different number of activity periods. It's a super complex computer algorithm, something or other. I don't know. Tom makes it happen. But yeah, I guess the easy answer is yes. And the higher you get, like if you're going for your gold star in something, a lot of your badge work time is going to be taken up doing those things. Like for example, our gold star kayakers, part of to get their gold star is they take, on that Friday of the second week, they take basically a full day kayak trip. They leave right after they eat an early breakfast and leave right away, and they don't get back into the late afternoon. So there are some real additional challenges that go along with it, and a real sense of accomplishment. My son went to camp every summer, obviously, and was able, because he was there for a long time, to achieve a lot of gold stars. And all of the little, tchotchke things that counselors give them, like a lot of times when you get your gold star in skin diving, they'll take an old flipper that no longer works and spray paint it gold and write your name on it in a paint pen. And he has a drawer at camp filled with these kinds of things that are really special remembrances of the things that they've accomplished.
So is there an actual badge, or do you just call it that?
No, there actually is. So
okay.
we're on an island. I should have brought one with me to show you. So our kids, every year, if you come for 2 weeks, every year you get a pennant, which is like a triangular flag that fly from ships, and it has different code flags on it denoting the year, and different stripes denoting the number of summers you've been at camp. So every summer you get a different one. You also will get little stars, like little embroidered stars for the activities that you've participated in during badge work, that then you can iron on to that pennant. And all of those stars, this is where it gets a little complex. A kid could explain this better than me. All of those stars have a point system attached to them. And so you accumulate points to earn burgees. So a burgee is also a flag that is flied on a ship, and it has instead of a triangle, it has sort of a 2-pointed end. and
Yeah.
you get different colors. There's a white, red, blue, white, blue, red, and then a gold burgee. And so every session will have maybe another 6 or 8 campers achieve their gold burgee. And we have all of the older kids who've already received their gold burgees come up. We joke about the secret gold burgee handshake, which is kind of funny. But it's kind of a big deal to kids. They love, oh, look at this. My assistant, Sarah Blunt, has just brought in an example.
Oh my gosh, good deal. Look at this. What service? Yeah. Okay, cool.
So
yeah, hold it back a little more. Let's see.
So this is a pennant. Yeah. So this
now higher. Hold it higher.
Higher?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, yeah.
So this is what a first-year camper would get. So it's got our logo on it, and it's got that says the year in code flags. So they get one every year. Oh, look, and now Tom has brought me in some burgees. So look at this. So this would be
That's a pennant.
This is a pennant. See, it has a little red there. So that's a second-year camper. And this is the coveted gold burgee.
Whoa, right, with the 2 little things.
Yeah, with the 2
That is so cool. So wait, so a camper who comes for like 7 years would have like a whole collection of these.
Right, and that I was just gonna say, one of the things that's cool is we ask kids sometimes to send us, how do you display your burgees, and a lot and in your pennants, and we'll get pictures of kids who have tied them together with line and strung them up on a bulletin board or in their room. I even got a picture a couple of years ago from a girl who took them all to college with her and hung them in her dorm room. Yeah, so it's a pretty cool thing.
That's so neat. So
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so when do you find that the younger kids are kind of still trying out lots of things? Or are some kids just like all along? It's just really individual. Like some kids really focus in on something and others just sort of.
And it really just depends, because some kids who are younger or even just there for the first time at 10 or 11 want to try everything. And some kids are like, nope, I'm into skin diving. I only want to do skin diving. I'm going to get every skin diving star there is, and I'm going to do that quickly. And then we have activities during badge work that don't have any stars or points attributed to them, because some kids aren't into that. While some kids are really into earning points and stars, some kids aren't. So we have a photography program where kids will learn how to take pictures, and their takeaway from that are just some great printed photos that they've taken. Kids can do different games and different hikes and things that don't have, our hikes have points attached to them, but so it just really depends on the kid, honestly.
Yeah,
we have some that move through it really quickly, and some who are like, yeah, that's just not my jam, and that's okay.
But you make sure during that first week that they kind of get exposed and know all the different things.
100%.
So they're not going to just be like at arts and crafts for the whole time or anything like that. So they're going to get exposed. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tom controls that badge work schedule, so nobody spends all of their time at arts and crafts. That doesn't happen. But yeah, that's why we have it scheduled or set up the way that we do, is we want kids to try everything at least once before they start making these other decisions.
Yeah, that's terrific. Okay, so Maria, I know you have a lot of families who are super loyal to Catalina, and they come back years and years and years, and then they often come back and are counselors. Mm-hmm. What do you hear from your families about the impact of their time at Catalina Island Camps?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's probably not dissimilar to other camps. Their kids come home and they are more self-confident. They have a better, the one that I like the most is they're nicer to their brothers and sisters. That's always a good one. They've learned how to take care of their things. That seems to be a big issue. And then there's just that sort of nebulous, they just seem more grown up. That's kind of my favorite thing when we get off the boat, when we come home, and the parents are all crying and the kids are like, ugh, Mom, stop crying. He looks so much older. He's 5 years older. You only had him for 2 weeks. But usually I say that's just the dirt. Scrub that off and you're saying babies underneath. But I do think there's growth that happens as a result of gaining that independence from your parents. And I think parents see that when their kids come home, and they really appreciate what that does for their kids. I talked a little bit about the composting. I hear a lot about that their kids, and that's probably the number one thing in that question in our parent survey that we do every year. They talk about the friends that their kids made. I sometimes will have a parent say to me, I really wish you could have my child only make friends that live nearby, because my daughter now wants to go to Texas over Christmas vacation to visit her friends, or that was kind of funny. Yeah, and just this awareness of the world around them, this ability to unplug from all of their devices for a few weeks. I mean, I'm sure that's pretty true for most camps, that's a piece of feedback they get from parents, this how happy they are that their kids went 2 whole weeks without watching a single YouTube video or playing a single game of Fortnite, and they had a great time while they were doing it, which they didn't think was possible.
Sure. So Maria, I know that you really take a lot of time with all of your families, but if someone is a very first year family, their child's never been away to an overnight camp before, can they talk to you? How does it work? How would they find out more information? What's the best way for them to just feel comfortable and find out if Catalina is a good match for their child?
And to call us. We love to talk on the phone. As nice as it is that there's all of this ease of communication through email, there's nothing like picking up the phone and talking to somebody. We actually did a big camp fair on Saturday here in Pasadena, and it was super sweet. There was this little girl, she was 8 or 9 years old, and she's really interested in resident camp, and her mother has zero interest in her daughter going to resident camp. And so I told the little girl, I was like, here, if this is a place you really want to come, you have our brochure, have your mom call me, because talking to nervous moms is kind of my superpower.
Totally. Isn't that so true? Okay. What's your number? Because I'm going to put it in right now.
Oh, sure. It's 626 296 4040.
Okay. 626-296-4040. Okay. I'm just putting it in just so that, if people want to call like right now, well, as soon as we're off, they can talk to you.
Well, they call right now. I have all of my
Somebody
staff
else
who are
right.
equally great can talk to you.
For sure.
And we do. We love talking to parents on the phone and answering questions. It's always interesting to me when a parent calls and apologizes for having questions. And I think to myself, I don't think that's weird at all. If my child were going to get on a boat and go away for 2 weeks, I would certainly want to know who's taking care of him or who's taking care of her. Yeah, that would be really important.
Yeah, I think parents should be really reassured, first of all, based on all of your years of experience and Tom's. And Tom is standing by. He just commented, your beloved husband is just ready. So if anybody wants to
call now.
No, but you know what? I think, Maria, part of it is I think we do live in a time where so much stuff is so impersonal, and camp and the way you guys run camp is so relational. So I think it's great that parents and kids can just start by meeting you before their kids even come, talking to you, and then you'll be there at the boat when they're getting on, and you'll be there with them their whole time at camp. You'll be there on the boat when they get off on the other end too. So
yeah, we do a ton of communication via email leading up to and while their kids are at camp. And it's so funny when parents will come up to the table where I'm checking kids in, and of course I have my name tag on, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're Maria, you've been emailing me so much. And I'm like, yes, thank you for not blocking my email. I appreciate that.
It's fun being a celebrity in your own little universe, isn't it? On your little island, you're like
my little island.
That's so great. Okay, Maria, is there anything else that you want to share that I forgot to ask you about that you want to make sure people know about your program or you guys?
Well, I told you I had a story that I wanted to share with you.
Okay, yes.
And I think this actually might be what I tell as the end part of my origin story this summer, because I've been thinking about this, about why do I continue doing this work. So I mentioned before, we have a leadership program for our older campers, and it starts for kids who are finishing 10th grade. We call it Campers in Leadership Training, our SILT program, and they come to camp for 2 weeks. And as part of their program, they hike the Trans-Catalina Trail. So we drive them into Avalon, and over 3 days, they hike the Trans-Cat back into camp. They arrive back on a Monday when the rest of camp is out on their overnight. So usually it's just me and then our youngest campers and their counselors who greet them. So there was this summer, it was probably maybe six summers ago. And one of the girls who was in the Silk group, I knew outside of camp. She was actually in my youth group at church, and I knew her parents well. And she was super anxious about this hike. Right, because it's not super long, but there's a ton of elevation change, a lot of up and down, and it's just not what a lot of kids are used to. It's a lot of anxiety for her going into it. So they came back, they hiked back to camp, and they were up on the edge of our cove getting ready to hike down the final trail into camp. And they were gathering there, waiting to come down together. And you probably find this a lot too. When kids see camp after being away for a while, they're so excited because they're home, right? We're home. And honestly, as a camp director, there's nothing more like gratifying than kids thinking of your camp as home. So up there, we're home. And they start hiking down. And then this girl, who I just adore, sees me and comes running towards me with both of her hands in the air. And she just is screaming at the top of her lungs, "I can do anything." Oh. And she ran over to me and hugged me and just kept saying that over and over again, "I can do anything." Of course, I cried like a baby. I have a history of that. And I was just reminded in that moment of how lucky we are to get to do the work that we do, because we provide kids with the time and the space and the opportunity to really learn that they can do anything. And that's such an amazing gift. I know a lot of parents that I talk to express maybe some guilt around this idea of sending their child away for the summer. And I always ask them to reframe that and think about the gift that they're giving their child, right? They're not sending their kid away. You're giving your kid the gift of 2 weeks or 4 weeks of all of these amazing opportunities and relationships that are going to serve them so well as they navigate adulthood. That again, totally biased, but I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I think we have the greatest jobs in the world.
Absolutely. Maria, this has been so much fun. I hope many families discover your amazing program that, oh my gosh, it'll be 100 years in 2026.
Yeah, pretty soon. Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. And so you guys really know what you're doing. You have such a loyal following, and I know people will love to find out more about you. So I will put a link in the comments to your website, and people should just call you and just talk to you all about Catalina.
Right, people are operators are standing by.
I wish I had a little ticker tape that I could put across it. I don't have that. So, okay. And Maria, I'm going to have to put links to all of our previous podcast episodes we've done with your Jedi mom tricks, so people can learn all of the great parenting things that you teach your staff every year too. So thanks for being on this series, Maria, and to all of you guys at Catalina, have a great rest of your spring and summer. And I hope some new families find you from this series.
Great. Thanks so much, Audrey.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.